Just as Republicans appear poised to do very well in the midterm election, we have some very strange, disruptive, and in some ways destructive behavior by Mitch McConnell. Now, let's start by talking about Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. Lisa Murkowski is turning out to be a real snake. First of all, she helped to orchestrate a ranked voting system that is taking a Republican state like Alaska and handing it off to the Democrats. Why? Because when you have multiple people in the same race, the ranked voting system doesn't mean that the party that gets the most votes. In fact, Republicans got 60% of the vote. And yet the candidate, Sarah Palin, lost to Democrat Mary Peltola. Now, in a new development, very disturbing, Lisa Murkowski has endorsed Mary Peltola, the Democrat. And Mary Peltola has turned around and endorsed. So she's endorsed Mary Peltola for Congress, and Mary Peltola has turned around and endorsed Lisa Murkowski for the Senate. Why? Because Kelly Tshibaka, who's been on this podcast now, I think 2 or 3 times, has been giving Murkowski a run for her money. It's quite possible that Tshibaka will pull this off, and Murkowski is running scared. So she's basically trying to corral some Democratic support to neutralize the fact that Republicans aren't going to vote for her. Now, my point is, what is Mitch McConnell doing with all this? Answer, he's pumping in millions of dollars to protect Murkowski. Why would you protect Murkowski against Kelly Tshibaka? Kelly Tshibaka's a Republican, and she's a solid Republican. She would be a very valuable vote on the Republican side. Lisa Murkowski is actually much more unreliable. But this brings me to a point that was clarified for me by Michelle Bachmann this weekend. Debbie and I were at the Focus on the Family retreat, a kind of a donor retreat at the beautiful Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado. Michelle Bachmann was there, and she's like, you know what? Mitch McConnell doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't even care whether he's the majority or the minority leader, as long as he's the leader. And what he wants in the Senate are sycophants who are loyal to him. And even though Lisa Murkowski portrays herself as very independent, she's a McConnell sycophant. And so McConnell would rather put all this money in and risk losing the race. That's not what's critical to him. What's critical to him is he wants ultimately to remain leader, and he wants people who are going to be, you can call them McConnellites in the Senate. We see this not just in Alaska, but we also see this in New Hampshire. Now look at the New Hampshire Senate race. The incumbent is Maggie Hassan, who is running against a Trumpster named Don Bolduc. McConnell tried to back Bolduc's opponent. Bolduc won the nomination. And you would think McConnell would then say, okay, listen, I've got money. I'm going to put it in. And what the McConnell people do is they're actually hurting Don Bolduc. How do they do it? They very noisily and loudly pull money out. They say, listen, we had committed $5.6 million to television ads in New Hampshire. We're now subtracting that money and putting it elsewhere. So McConnell and his malevolent staff, what they do is they go leak this information, which is obviously damaging to Don Bolduc. Why? Because it gives the idea that even McConnell doesn't think that that's a winnable race. So what McConnell is doing is pulling out the rug from under. Now, it would be one thing if Don Bolduc was, 30% in the polls and Maggie Hassan was 70% nonsense. In fact, they're 2 points apart. Interactive polls, Maggie Hassan 49, Don Bolduc 47. This is a winnable race. Maggie Hassan has actually been a very unpopular senator since she won the race by a hair, very narrowly, against Kelly Ayotte the last time around. So this is a race Republicans can win. And what I find outrageous, bordering on criminal, is that Mitch McConnell and his goons are trying to undermine Bolduc. Why? Because he's not a McConnellite. Yes, he's a Republican. He's a conservative Republican. It would be so great to win a Senate seat in New Hampshire, of all places. This would show that we're able to win these states that have been, New Hampshire's been a purple state leaning blue now consistently in the last several elections. So think how good it would be to win to win. By the way, in the gubernatorial race, Chris Sununu is almost 20 points ahead of his opponent, Tom Sherman. There was some talk about Sununu entering the Senate race, but he chose not to. Anyway, he's going to win easily for governor. But here's McConnell, in my view, subverting somebody who could win this race and wasting this money on Lisa Murkowski when McConnell should get out of that. Pay no attention to it. Let Lisa Murkowski battle it out with Kelly Tshibaka, because either way, there's going to be a Republican that will help us reach the majority in the Senate. Unfortunately, it seems that in some cases we are dealing with problems not just on the other side, not just coming from the left, but as in this case, coming from our own Mitch McConnell.